Hey everybody, welcome back to the board meeting. Today I'm doing a little bit of a board game rambling video where I'm going to be taking this a subject that I feel like talking about today and going on a little bit of rambling about it. I know the background looks a little bit different right now because I'm currently moving, so this is my last shelf that I have down here, so it looks a little bit different in the background. But today's subject and topic is going to be about being a nerd and how I think you should be proud of being a nerd. And I've been called a nerd my entire life for several different things. But for in particularly, right now I get called a nerd because I'm kind of obsessive when it comes to board games and stats of board games and rating them and stuff like that. But I also was called a nerd forever for reading so much. I was called a nerd for liking sci-fi and fantasy books and movies and stuff like that. TV shows. I enjoy the nerd culture of that particular thing. I was kind of I in my opinion I was a big nerd when it came to sports actually, and this is one thing that people call people nerds because of those things. But I don't think being a nerd is just for like the weird things in cultures. The board games and stuff like that. I think you can be a nerd when it comes to pretty much anything. Like I said, I think I was a very big nerd when I was in high school and middle school when I was younger for sports stuff, for sports stats. Like, if you wanted to know what's Edgar Martinez batting average in this year, I'd be like, oh, he batted 308 this year, they batted 323 this year. And if you asked me how many home runs Ken Griffey Jr. hit in these couple years, I could nail those statistics. If you asked me how many strikeouts Randy Johnson had in different years, I would have that. I loved when I was younger getting these baseball cards and flipping over those cards instantly and looking at all the different stats for those particular players, and I would memorize them. I was a huge nerd when it came to sports stats, even with other sports, not just baseball, but football and with hockey now and stuff like that. And so I think, sports can be an extremely nerdy thing as adults that we get into. To me, like when a lot of times people put different athletes against each other, and comparing them that are from different eras. Who would be better? And you're like, oh, LeBron versus Michael Jordan, and they're like, oh, they compare Michael Jordan's Bulls years versus LeBron and LeBron jumping to all these different teams, and they compare different stats, and they're like, this guy would be better than this guy, and they do that with like Tom Brady versus Patrick Mahomes in football, and people go back and forth, and every time I hear these conversations, I'm like, all you're doing is comparing like us nerds who compare like superheroes. What if superheroes versus each other? What if the Flash versus Superman? What if the Green Lantern versus Thor, or whatever you want to do? And you made up situations and debated each other who would win in these certain things. That's what people when they're talking about sports do when they're comparing different athletes. And I always get a little bit of chuckle of that because every time people do that, I think of this. So I think sports can be very nerdy. And a lot of things can be very nerdy. When you talk about being a nerd, I feel like it's almost like when you get into a hobby and you become obsessive about it. Like one of my friends, he was talking and you're like, well, Shane's the nerd and I'm not really that nerdy. I'm like, but everybody's got their nerd thing. And we ended up started talking, and he talked about how many movies he goes to and how he loves going to the movie theater. And I do too. It's one of my favorite things. But he keeps all of his different movie tickets that he's ever gone to, and he saves those movie tickets and puts them in a book. Then he writes down all the movies he's been to. He writes down each theater that he's been to in different theaters, each room in different theaters. And he writes down like a rating for those movies and a little short review for them. And when he was talking about that, I was like, that's exactly what I do for board games. I mean, I go on Board Game Geek and I rate different games. I write little reviews. I do these YouTube videos. I'm very nerdy when it comes to board games for myself because that's something that I'm passionate about. And that when I talk about like someone being nerdy about something, I think it's a great thing. I think it's just, oh, they're very passionate about that particular subject. It doesn't have to be that typical nerdy subject. You can be nerdy about anything. And then, talking about my girlfriend, and she's like, well, I don't know what I'd be nerdy at. And then she was like, well, I do watch a lot of those real time, the Housewives shows, the Real Worlds or whatever, which I'm not a big fan of those. But she like watches those like religiously, you know, and she knows all these different people. She's very nerdy about that stuff, and a couple other things as well. I think everybody's got their nerd thing, and I think it's something that you should be proud of because it's something that you enjoy. So don't let someone else diminish something that you feel passionate about, something that you like so much, something that you consider a hobby that takes up time and kind of gives you an escape from reality for a little bit, and you don't have to worry so much. And that's a great thing to be, is to be passionate about something. And that's kind of what I think just being a nerd about is being passionate about a particular subject or hobby or whatever we're talking about. And yeah, so yeah, that's this whole video. It's just something that's been on my mind. It's something that's been discussed in my group of as of late with different people. So comment down below, what do you think you are nerdy about? And I know a lot of people are going to say board games. What else are you nerdy about when it comes to being so obsessed with certain, like, subjects or whatever, whether it's math or numbers or whatever you're into? Just comment down below what is it that you think you are nerdy about. But either way, if you did enjoy this video, make sure to like and subscribe to see more weekly content from me, Shane, at The Board Meanie in the future. Hope you all have an amazing day. Take care.